As a start, do you mind just giving me a little kind of autobiographical sketch where you're from, what you've done, where you are now, and and this can be as elaborate or not as you like.
Okay. Well, I was born here in Portland, in Northeast Portland, in November 1955, and I grew up here. In fact, I grew up in a house very much like the one that we're sitting in right now. I don't think I mentioned that. That when my sisters walk into this house, they go, "You bought the house on 26th," and my grandfather had built that. My grandmother immigrated here from Scotland a little, I think, around 1912, and my grandfather came up. He was from Louisiana, came across eventually over a course of many years across to California, and then he was in San Francisco during the quake of 1907. Was that
6? Yeah.
Yeah, and then that decided him to leave California, so he came up here and they met. And like I said, he was a builder. Built the house I grew up in, and he helped work on Timberline Lodge with the WPA during the Depression.
Oh, is that big chalet?
Yeah, he built.
Is that Mount Hood?
Yes, on Mount Hood, and he was a bricklayer and a stonemason, and it's a big stone building. And I never met him. He died before I was born, but I think they had a display up there one time. We happened to be up there, and I think I recognized him in one of the pictures. So anyway, that's kind of my Oregon roots. My folks were both born in Portland. My father's parents, his mother came here from England and his father from Germany. And I don't know anything about them because they both died when my father was young. And he grew up in North Portland. My mom grew up in Northeast Portland. And then, like I say, I grew up in the house that she grew up in.
And what did your parents do?
My mom was a housewife, and my father worked for the Oregonian newspaper. He was orphaned pretty young, and he was brought up. I guess his mother had an insurance policy or something that she told him about before she died, and he went downtown. I mean, he must have been maybe 11, maybe around that age. He went downtown to the British consulate and explained to them, and they got this money for him that provided him with $1 a week until he grew up. And so they were able to work out a foster home for him where they paid for his room and board, $1 a week. And he delivered newspapers, and a man on his route was impressed with his reliability and offered him a part-time job in the classified ad department of the Oregonian. And that's where he started, and he went away to World War II, came back, got his job at the Oregonian back, and was there for 40 years.
And by the end, what kind of writing was he doing?
He was still in advertising. He was he didn't actually write the ads, but he sold the ad space, worked out the details. I don't know what you would call that exactly. Account manager or something. Not in classified anymore, but in display ads. So he left, I think in the late 80s.
Okay, so it's 1955, and you were born.
Yes. Yeah. And then what?
And then what? Well, that was my question.
I went to the same elementary school my mother did and my older sisters had, and I would have gone to Jefferson High School, which is now kind of a controversial school. Well, it's the neighborhood was changing. It had been kind of a white working class neighborhood, and it was, I don't know why, it was getting poorer, and also more black people were moving into the neighborhood. There's kind of two things at the same time. But they also built a new high school, an experimental high school, and I went there instead because, I mean, that was my district.
Mm-hmm.
So that was called John Adams, and it was, they were, I think it was a team from Harvard came out and had these ideas about group learnings, smaller groups within a school, and team teaching and interdisciplinary teaching. They really had quite a handful because that school pulled from the poorest, some of the poorest parts of Portland, well, the poorest parts of Portland at that time, and also from some pretty well-heeled neighborhoods, middle class, upper middle class, middle class.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had a difficult mix. And also it was the early 70s. And of course we were playing out a lot of the black-white tension throughout America was filtering down. I mean,
What's your most vivid memory of that aspect of it? I mean, well, first of all, it was the neighborhood you grew up in was demographically an integrated neighborhood. Was it socially an integrated neighborhood? I mean, in terms of just the rhythms of people's lives, was there a lot of...
I mean, when the kids are littler, you play with the neighbor kids, so my experience was that, you play with the kids and then you get to high school and you split off into your racial group and your social group, I mean, your social group
becomes your racial group in a way.
Yeah.
How do you remember that? Do you have any vivid memories of that process?
One thing, in elementary school, this one lady started a Campfire Girls group. And of course it was only later that I understood that she was quite a progressive woman and saw this new integration happening and wanted to do something to enhance it among the girls especially. And she later became like the president of the YWCA here in Portland, stuff like that, and did a lot of social justice work. But from, I don't know, maybe 4th grade through 8th grade, although the rest of the week, everybody's kind of doing their own thing on the playground and stuff, once a week, this group of girls got together and they were different, black and white kids were all together there. Also, as I once I grew up, I realized that my teachers really did do a lot more social history of slavery and black people and so forth than, when I got out into the larger world, I found out a lot of people were way more ignorant than I was about that. And also I had black teachers, and that was in elementary school. So that was kind of early for that. But what I was going to say about Campfire was that at the 8th grade, we were finishing up. There was supposed to be this one last big event, and it happened to fall on the same night that Sly and the Family Stone were playing. And there was a real, the white girls wanted to go, but they weren't going to go, and there were some of the black girls came and some of them didn't. Some of them went to the concert. It was kind of like whose parents were going to lay down the law and say you cannot go. In fact, I think a couple of the white girls went to the concert too. I went to the campfire event, but oh well. I never claimed to be cool. So that was one of those memories. Another memory was there was some fight or something. And it just seemed like they were always the administration, the teachers were always okay. They weren't really always calling assemblies. There was probably just one assembly where they're trying to talk to everybody and say, "Stop fighting with each other. You can't do this." But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was. On the one hand, they were speaking like I knew was the right thing. It was like the races need to get along and so on and so forth. On the other hand, they were the authorities and we were the kids. And who listens to authority when you're in... when I say grade school, I mean 1st through 8th grade. That was it. I do remember there being a stop fighting with each other assembly there, but I don't remember if school closed. In high school, there was just a little bit off campus. There was a knifing, like at the fast food place next door or something like that. Was it? It was. Oh, I think it was a white guy. I'm not even sure he was a student. Knifed a black kid a guy named Chucky, who was a student, and I didn't know the white kid. I knew Chucky, and he didn't die. He just got injured, and that just the school. Okay, I was busy doing my hippie thing. They were talking about early 70s here. I was off. I managed to leave on every possible field trip. So there was some kind of restlessness in the school. And remember, this is the experimental school with these poor hapless people from Harvard coming in and trying to deal with us. And most of them actually had left by that time. Most of the Harvard team was gone. There was some restlessness in school when I left on my field trip. When I came back, the few kids and I who had gone off on this little trip, we walked in, and suddenly all these teachers are rushing out of. I mean, the school's apparently empty. It's quiet, and these teachers rush out, and they're going, "What are you doing here? Get out of here! What are you doing here?" I'm like, "What? Yeah, it's school." And they after this knifing, the school had. The bands of black kids had started running through the halls and trying to look for the guy who'd done the knifing, and they'd gotten the wrong guy, and everything was just out of control. And actually, I did see groups running in the hall before I left. I'm remembering that now. That was before I left. There were groups of kids, mobs. And like I would know these kids, these are people I'd been in school with since kindergarten, we're talking people I'd known 10 years. And I'd be going, "Teresa, what's going on?" Ignore me. There was like not even a sign. The people were in a mob mentality in the halls of my school. And not recognizing, no recognition on faces and stuff. And like I say, then I left for a field trip, and then when I came back, the teachers are like, "What are you doing here?" And they had sent all the white kids home, and they were having an assembly with the black kids, and they were like, you're in danger, and I'm like, "Oh man, no, I'm not." And incidentally, throughout my growing up, from time to time, I would like encounter a new black kid, and there might be some, like, I'm going to beat you up kind of thing. And then another black kid who knew me would come along and say, oh no, Martha's nice, and, that was that. And so anyway, I felt like I was okay. I went to my locker and got my stuff, and the kids came out of, the kids who were still there came out of the assembly, the black kids, and, ignored me. Because I felt, I was pretty confident that would be, because of course you have these subsets. High school is so full of cliques. Mm-hmm. And while I wasn't particularly tight with any black kids, I also wasn't in opposition to anybody, and I was nice. Everybody knew I was nice. I was nice to everybody, and so it was okay. And I wasn't dating a black boy, which would also tend to. If you did that, man, the black kids were yelling at you all the time. That was pretty iffy.
What about the white kids?
No, it was so interesting because we were being taught that there was all this violence and prejudice against black kids, but what we were experiencing was that black kids were yelling at the white kids and beating on the white kids, and not very much of the other way around. Mm-hmm. And I think what was going on was that we were in this little place and time where that appeared to be happening, and in fact I think it was happening. But I certainly knew that in the context of the larger culture, something different was going on, and I also knew I was real clear that when we graduated, I would just, in the course of things, get a better job, that kind of thing. And I mean, because we were being taught history, but it was a time where there was a lot of anger coming out. There was this girl in when I was still in grade school. Her brother had Black Panther meetings at home, and I remember her, in home ec one day. She's talking to Carol's talking to Linda. She goes, "Yeah, my brother had a meeting last night at home," and and I'm thinking, "Oh shit, man, I'm gonna get beat up today," and in class, I'm walking past her and she just kicks me, but yet. I don't know whether it was just me or whether it was everybody in general, but I wasn't going to complain because it would just make things worse. Uh-huh. I don't know. It sounds weird, but...
So you're like, what, 13, 14, 15 years old? 12, 13?
13.
13-ish. So
when I'm getting kicked, yeah.
Do you remember any specific ideas that you had about the relationship between what was going on between the kids and the way that the adults around you were managing it or mismanaging it or trying to manage it? Like, do you remember thinking about that at all?
Yeah. I think that it seemed to me that well, I'm trying to remember, because on the one hand, I knew this one boy who was biracial, and it was just friggin' heartbreaking, man, because he was always in trouble, and I don't know, maybe I didn't recognize it, but he was always being victimized by somebody, and therefore he was in a fight, and therefore he was suspended. And I mean, he was a really smart kid, and I think he was difficult, but as near as I could tell, he wasn't starting those fights. he was getting it from all sides. Another girl that I knew was in a similar situation, except, I don't know, man. It was sad. It seemed like it just didn't quite seem like the black kids were quite getting the positive attention that they could be. And yet, in some ways, although they might, I'm trying to think. This is a little bit different angle than I thought about it, and I'm trying to think about classroom behavior. Wasn't, I think that everybody was pretty equally outrageous. I mean, we're talking middle school age, So I don't think that the black kids got picked on by the teachers more. On the other hand, I don't think they got built up as much, as the, and I mean, encouraged, I think is the word I want. But I think when it came to the fighting, the teachers were a little bit, they tended to be kind of liberal, I think, and a little bit hands off and afraid of dealing with it too much. I don't know. I that was kind of, at the time, I just had the impression that the authorities didn't know what the fuck to do. That's it. And in the larger picture, you're seeing civil rights marches, and you're moving on into the anti-war demonstrations, and then people are getting shot, and and it's like, what? I mean, it just seemed very chaotic, and I think to this, I think it really affected my take on authority. I mean, I've just, figured, yeah, authority, they're the people in charge who don't know what to do. So, yeah.
I want to eventually kind of fill in the years between the 70s and the moment we're in now. We can kind of loop back and do that. But let's fast forward. I mean, given the things that you just described, and given the neighborhood that you grew up in and the schools that you went to, and especially the moment in history that was, if you fast forward to the election of Barack Obama, can you talk a little bit about, first of all, like how you experienced that, and was it something that took you by surprise when it happened? Was it something that made sense to you? How did you feel about his election? How have you felt about him as a president, and also about the kinds of opposition that have emerged?
One of the things that surprised me was, first off, he's biracial, and like I say, those are the kids who really had it bad in my neighborhood, and I was astonished that somebody biracial could be elected president. Even
more than if he had been, if both of his parents were black?
Now that I think about it, no. Now that I've watched it, no. But at the time, yeah, because, but the other interesting thing to me is that his father was not an American Negro. His father was an African. And that's also, in some weird way, America has managed to elect a black man, but not the son of anybody, a former slave, a person who was victimized, who came through this American black person experience. It's I just think it's psychologically it's kind of an interesting sleight of hand. Doesn't that you know what I'm saying here? That I mean, Obama himself as an individual. I'm sure I haven't read his book. I don't know him that much, but it's just interesting to me that people keep saying that we elected a black president. No, we didn't quite. Not quite. And like I say, just kind of a sort of psychological sleight of hand. But the other thing, though, my other reaction to Obama is he's totally like the effective teachers that I had in grade school, or those middle school years and high school, and he has a great deal of authority with me. Not at first, because I'm like, man, this guy does not have enough experience to be president, and I really thought that it should be Hillary Clinton, but I was also, like the left, the right hates her so much, and I didn't think that anybody at all black could get elected. But as I watched his campaign, I'm like, okay, this is going to work. Mm-hmm. This is going to work. And yeah, I cried. I cried at.
Did you support Hillary until the moment that he got the nomination, or was there a point where you kind of peeled off and joined his?
I honestly don't remember whether I voted for Hillary or Obama in the primary. I might have voted for her and the rest of the family for Obama. But once he's past the primary, of course.
Right.
And you got to remember too, as you're talking to me, that we haven't had an operational watch television for 30 years. So I don't watch the TV news, and so I wasn't seeing him. I was more picking up stuff from the internet and so forth. But there was so much excitement about him. I'm like, all right, this is good. And I just like him. I just like the guy, I mean, and he has, I mean,
So, okay, household without a TV, that puts you in a very peculiar demographic. Well, tell me about election night. Where were you and how did you experience the election? How did you track it?
On the radio, we turn, on election night, we turn on a radio. And also this election, Dale my husband was going to one of the websites, Politico, I think. I'm not sure which one. He was tracking those electoral college votes, and I mean, I love Obama, and I love how he can just say, hey, stop this, this is, and it's actually driven me crazy in parts during the healthcare debates, where, I mean, he was trying for that bipartisan thing. And it's just like, oh, just stop, man. Just be out there like you are sometimes. Just say it, Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys aren't even trying. We're just going to do this, like he did at the end. Uh-huh. I wish he had done that sooner.
You lost patience with him, or your patience was at least wearing thin.
I wouldn't say my patience was wearing. I mean, I would just say I was wishing he would do something different. Mm-hmm. My patience was entirely gone with the Republicans. Mm-hmm. but I mean, I had also watched the debacle of when Hillary Clinton tried to do the healthcare reform, and I think the guy is really smart. It's he made it go through Congress. I mean, he let it go through Congress, and then in the end, he shepherded it. As I see, that's what I think happened.
Yeah. Have you been surprised by anything that you've seen in the opposition? I mean, there was this moment. Well, I mean, you described it. Moment? Well, you described it yourself. The moment where there's kind of this moment of elation, like, "Wow, we did it! We elected a black man!" Right?
Oh, close.
Right, close. Right, okay. But anyway, there was that moment of elation, and then as things unfolded through the early months and then on into the whole first year and beyond of his administration, we've just seen this extraordinary opposition to him, and I'm just wondering if any of that has taken you by surprise or has made you kind of step back from that moment of jubilation.
I mean, it doesn't seem. Do you remember how much the right hated Hillary Clinton when Clinton was president? It seems similar to that, and it seems like I don't know. It seems like the George W. years were really preparing people to act this way, and it's an interesting thing. Is it? Of course, it must be fueled partly by race, and you got this great little thing going where we can pretend that it's not because after all it's we're in a post-racial society, so that you complained about race, you played the race card, that whole thing. You got that going too. Where the right pretends that any time you complain, but I do think it's fueled. I am a little surprised. But not too much because I've been watching, Yeah, I'm a little surprised by how clearly racial some of it is. The Limbaugh stuff and the Glenn Beck stuff, that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's really all. I mean, I think a lot of it, some of it's racial, but a lot of it is just they've had their way for a while, and they just want to keep having it their way.
Right. So far, so here we are, how many months? Almost exactly a year and a half, a little bit short of a year and a half into his administration. Has he, in your view, been successful so far?
Yes, I think so. I mean, especially given this tremendous opposition. And I mean, how long have people been trying to reform healthcare, for example? That is just such a has been such a choking point and really, I mean, I remember all the scaremongering back when Medicare came in. I mean, I was just a kid, but it was going to bankrupt the country. It's going to bankrupt the country. It's going to wreck us, and so it's the same stuff playing out again. I'm disappointed with the opening up the drilling. I'm very unhappy about the.
How do you understand drilling.
That? I think he's a very pragmatic guy, and we need more oil. That's how I understand that. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's particularly left. He's centrist, and I don't know. I haven't looked into it that much. I haven't paid that much attention. I was kind of blindsided by it, but it probably seemed to him like a good place to to sort of step over on, like, okay, step on some left wing toes, so to speak, toes of the left wing.
Well, one of the things that we haven't talked about, and maybe this is the moment to kind of loop back and talk about some of the intervening years, but the economic collapse and kind of the world that you see about you in Portland, Oregon in 2010, and your experience of the collapse, but also kind of when and where you enter this kind of economic story.
Well, as I said, my father worked for 40 years for the same employer. I mean, there was a kind of security in my life that I certainly have not, my kids have not experienced, even though after high school I went up to Olympia, Washington, to the Evergreen State College, where I met the man that I married, and he had inherited a bunch of money, and his family was much more well off and much better educated. I'm the first one in my family to graduate college. My sister did go for a year. I have two older sisters. I think it's a fairly typical American progression here, where my grandmother had sun schooling. My grandparents had sun school. My parents graduated high school and had a bit of job training, and then my sister did some college. I actually graduated. I'm sorry, where did we start from here?
Well, the economic collapse, but you were going all the way back to your...
So anyway, I married into a higher economic class. Mm-hmm. Also, his parents had advanced degrees, which they lived in the kind of houses that my aunt worked in. My great aunt and my grandmother were domestic servants, so we got. In fact, my aunt was a nanny in a rich person's house, and she'd come and visit us, and we'd take her home and get to go to the really rich people's neighborhood. And anyway, up in the hills here, and then not my husband's family's not that rich, but they did have a house up on the hill, and that was something. I mean, that's kind of, I think, in a lot of places, if you're up on the hill, you're better off. Mm-hmm. And so it was through them that I got my first ride in an airplane. Through them that I saw Europe, my husband. So for my experience of the current economics crisis is very influenced by my own experience, which is that my husband made a couple of major career changes. He almost got his PhD in English, but he didn't really want to go into academics. He came back home to Oregon, and he was kind of directionless for a while, and then because he likes languages and that kind of tinkering, it seemed like computers would be a good thing. And so he went back, did some almost 4 years again of school, and then worked for about 10 years in the computer industry. And then a few years ago, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And I'm trying to talk him into staying until, just till, first I'm like, just till the kids get through college. He's like, I can't do it that long. Well, just till this, just till that. And finally, he comes home one day, and it's like, I gave my 2-week notice, and I'm like, I had my health issues going on that made working a little bit hard, and take care of the kids and stuff. I mean, even though they were older. So, all of a sudden, we've had this padding of the money he inherited. It helped us get into a nice house. We were able to have our kids educated privately because, I wasn't really anxious to have them in public school, and getting kicked and shit like that, And even though now I have a bit more, I don't know, my kids seem to need a more gentle environment than I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was all that. There were some benefits, but also it wasn't all that good for me. I never got bad beat up. I never bled. I did see blood in the halls. It's real weird walking down the halls and all of a sudden this kid's neck gets, it's bloody in front of me. And there were more guns were starting to happen at that time. Anyway, privately educated our kids. Okay, suddenly my husband, where our income goes down 90%. I'm like, okay, all right, let me get situated here. Let me get another job. After a little while, my husband took a half-time job, but even so, we still have a 75% decrease in our income because, he was so desperate to get out of high tech that he's just not seeing that we don't have health coverage. We don't have, a lot of the benefits that he had are just gone. And so I've been going through I've been managing and going through the money that we had. So we're starting up higher. We're starting a higher level of economic. We just have more money. We have more money, but suddenly his job is gone, even though it's by his own hand. And this is before the big meltdown. But I saw it coming. I'm like, Dale, we've had George W. Bush in office. Things are not going to go well in a couple more years. There's going to be a recession. I didn't know how bad. But the consequence of all this is that I've had a long period of time where I've been at home, taking care of family, kids, old people, and now I'm looking for work, along with a whole lot of people with a whole lot more experience. And I've not gotten a job. Right at this moment, I have to confess that I'm not working very hard at it because my father's dying. But it's been quite something. And I feel like we're a little microcosm, kind of a parallel universe in miniature where we're at a different economic level than we started.
Mm-hmm.
And
what kinds of things are you looking for?
I'm looking for administrative assistant sort of jobs. I wanted to be in nonprofits. Particularly, what I really wanted to do was some kind of work in environmental nonprofit. And of course, right when I started, actually, I had gotten some training. I'd done some volunteering, done an internship, and I was on the internship when the bank meltdown happened. Mm. And I'm just like hearing about that, and I'm going, I'm screwed. This is and what surprised me. You asked me about surprises with the resistance to Obama and stuff. What really surprised me was the rapidity of this economic collapse. I mean, I thought it would take months, that it trickled down. Mm. It was boom. It was so fast.
Can you describe that a little bit here in Portland? I mean, how did you see that, and what were the signs of the immediacy of it?
Well, I have been, as I was figuring out what I was going to do, in terms of job and stuff. I was looking regularly on the internet. I mean, not regularly, daily, every day, studying jobs, what was being posted, job descriptions, all that. So what I got to see was this, the daily list on Craigslist suddenly I can't say if it was half or a quarter, but there were just not as many jobs, and it was within weeks. It was within weeks that started, and it continued. It shrunk and shrunk. It's lightened up a little bit in the last couple months. There are more showing, but that was a remarkable thing to me, to see suddenly how many fewer jobs were available.
Mm-hmm. Do you come in contact with other people who are looking for work, or do you know other people who are looking for work?
I've gone some to a job seeker support group, not a whole lot, but some. It has been going on for a long time, and it was held in a library. And the first time I went, there were so many, the room was overfull. The capacity of the room was overfilled, that they let that go. The next week, the librarians were there saying, you guys can't do this anymore. You have to have some people empty out of here because we're breaking the fire rules. And also we were like taking, it was a meeting room, and we were going and taking chairs out of the library and stuff. So this place, this meeting group that had coexisted very happily with the library for years was suddenly too big.
Yeah. So what kind of numbers are we talking about?
30 people at this meeting. That's a weekly meeting, mm-hmm. And but that doesn't portray anything like I know that one of the jobs that I applied for, that was a part-time $10 an hour job, had 200 applicants. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, and jobs that are not advertised, these aren't widely advertised jobs. Mm-hmm. These are ones you got to look for. And that's the kind of thing that I saw. That's what I'm thinking of offhand. It seems like I'm forgetting stuff, but mm-hmm. But it was really noticeable in terms of what was being advertised, and then people were doing a lot of more word of mouth, letting people, like the last job I didn't get, that it was never posted mm-hmm. anywhere except there internally. So and yet when I didn't get the job, the supervisor was telling me, we had such an amazing group of candidates. Oh, another thing I know about is that working with nonprofits, I know about AmeriCorps. Is that the program that you know about? I deal with people who work with volunteers and AmeriCorps stuff. Volunteer managers had too many people. They couldn't handle all the volunteers they were having. People offering tremendous skills that they just had too much. I mean, it's getting to a volunteer position can be a lot like getting a job now, where you have to fill out paperwork and everything. The other thing is that they're getting literally twice as many people offering to work for a year for $880 a month after taxes. Those are the AmeriCorps jobs, mm-hmm. and I've done the paperwork for that. I mean, just the paperwork alone is really daunting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of writing involved and a lot of finicky work to get to the application finished. So, so that's another place where I saw that change was mm-hmm. Was in the volunteer and the AmeriCorps stuff. Mm-hmm. And also, the other thing, well, can I say something else about AmeriCorps? There used to be, now it's happening. I mean, I'm going out on a limb here, maybe I'm wrong, but it sure seems to me that you can do a maximum of 2 years in AmeriCorps. And it sure seems to me that in the nonprofits, you don't see anything that's asking for less than 2 years of experience. It's sort of like this thing that was supposed to be an addition and an enhancement has become the entry-level position. It's like, fine, whatever. It's a bummer. And I'm seeing, the other thing I'm seeing in the job listings are, of course, that they are upping the ante. They're asking for 5 years experience for an administrative position. And, 2 years for things that you really don't need experience for. So.
What's the general feeling? I mean, you've been in the city for a really long time. You know it really well. Are there things in kind of the public culture of the city that seem different in these last few years?
There are a lot of people coming into town still. It's perceived as a place for creative young people, people who are interested in environmental issues and concerns. Of course, a lot of folks are migrating up from California. That's always been, hey, my grandfather did it, coming up here. Also, a lot of people from Mexico, Central America, moving up here. Certainly, it's a much more diverse city than it used to be. Even though the black population has remained the same, or maybe even smaller. And there have been some tough, I'll just let that go. There have been some tough changes to the area of town where most black people lived. There was a hospital built and a lot of bulldozing that went on, so that whole neighborhoods were gone, but yet they didn't build on them. You got to wonder about that, man, because, then you got these empty spaces around the hospital that used to be black neighborhood. And, I mean, I didn't know about it at the time, but as the hospital was built and never built into those spaces, that was weird. But you're talking about now, and that was a while ago. The police have certainly been... they had a previous police chief came up from LA and seemed kind of militaristic in his style. Before him, we had a black police chief, and I liked him. I thought he was good. But I think he might have moved to D.C. even. I know that he was investigating that sniping that was going on back there. Then the new guy, I couldn't believe this guy they got. I mean, Mr. Straight Arrow guy from L.A. makes everybody all the cops cut their hair. And, Portland, I think, breathed a sigh of relief when he left. But yet, there's I think that there is racial profiling here. I certainly, if you count the number of people who get shot by the police, it's a lot more black people than white people. And it's a problem. They've just done some changes. I mean, at City Hall, they're doing some more oversight, and that's a change. I mean, I think that the people who were never before uncomfortable with our police are uncomfortable with them at this point. Mm-hmm. another change in Portland is that based on the land use, there's the overall statewide land use. We're trying to keep cities, and country, and not have a lot of sprawl. Mm-hmm. And with the growth of Portland, what that can sometimes mean, a lot of times means, is that somebody's backyard gets a house built in it. The houses go in. We get these new skinny houses that infill they call it. And I am way ambivalent about that because I need some green around me, but I understand it because I am so sorry to see it happening in the neighborhoods, but I'm so glad that we're not sprawling all over the place. Mm-hmm. It's just a killer to have folks coming here because they love the greenery, mm-hmm. And that's fine. You get one or two folks coming, love the greenery. It's one thing, but you get. I think we've been growing by. I think this is one of the fastest growing places in the world. And that's a little hard to bear mm-hmm. sometimes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I've talked and talked.
No. Well, there's one more thing. There's when you're talking about the police, there's been, I know in Seattle, but also Portland too, there's some issues around panhandling. And
yes.
Just talk a little bit about what the new rules are, or how that's being regulated, or how that affects.
I honestly have lost track of that. There was some rules that were attempted that were found not unconstitutional. I haven't. My husband works downtown. He hasn't been bothered by panhandlers. I mean, some of them are scary looking. I got the guys hanging around with their pit bulls on their little spiky chains and everything, but. It hasn't. I haven't experienced much of that, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't know.
I was struck by it because the Northwest is the only place that I've been where it's even discussed, and so I was curious about it.
I think that although I've heard people say, I've read letters to the editor, I should say, where people say I came from another city and I'm shocked by it. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about because it still seems calmer to me than other places.
Uh-huh. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel we should have?
I have no idea. How about you? What do you think? Was there anything that...
No, I mean, this has been fantastic, but I just wondered if there was anything that...
Anything that you wanted to ask?
No,
Yeah, and I had just mentioned that I kind of laid some fear and stuff from was residual from my school. I kind of laid that to rest when I worked in New Haven in a predominantly black high school. Although, I had. So I was in the authority position. Not that I had control over anybody, but had some good experiences with kids, and it's been a it's a nuanced thing, and I wish Portland was doing better with it. Especially the cop thing, but all of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, how about your kids? You have kids who are college age, basically.
Uh-huh.
What's your sense of their sense of race and race relations in Portland?
I think they're pretty clueless. and that's nice in one way. My daughter works in the public schools, and she works with a racially diverse group of kids, and I don't know how aware of different pressures and stuff she is. My son, like, told me one day that he was walking with a friend, and a friend was worried about a cop or something, and he said, well, yeah, because I might get stopped because I'm Latino. And my son's like, you are? So, I mean, in one way it's charming, in another way it's like, man, that is the world out there. You got to be aware. And I don't know. So I don't know. I also, okay, I'll tell you this. Without TV, and I've been home a lot, I do feel like, like Rip Van Winkle. I'm a little bit Rip Van Winkle. And so I don't know. I just feel like there's been big changes out there that I don't know about, that I don't, I feel like I know about a piece of time that was a long time ago now. And so I don't know. But I like Obama. I like him a lot.
Well, thank you.
I forgot to tell you about my high school, this experiment, this new construction. They built this new high school. They brought in these people, this fantastic new place. A few years after, I mean, not a few years, but, a while after I graduated, the population went down enough that they did not need a high school. And they moved a middle school in there. They had changed the school systems. And the high school that my sisters and my mother went to is always one that they're talking about. Ooh, that one's not making the grade. And my high school became a middle school that's one's not making the grade. That's that divide, like why aren't the minority kids getting the same education, And then they found out, my high school became Whitaker Middle School. Then they found out that Whitaker Middle School had toxic mold in it. The newest school building in Portland had toxic mold. And so I've been driving past there from time to time, and it's closed. It's all surrounded by big fences, keep people out. And then one day I drove past there. There was nothing. There was grass growing. I mean, I had missed the whole demolition phase and the removal phase, and the grass was growing. And it was like such a weird experience. It was such a weird experience. Because, I saw that. It was originally a park and some houses that was wiped out for the school. There was the school. And I saw it go back to the park. I didn't see it going. It just, boom, it's like disappeared. And the place, incidentally, it was that 70s architecture that it looked like a prison from the outside. So, but it was a weird thing. Yeah. So I want to tell you that. It's like, whoa. I felt like, I don't know, Greek tragedy or something. So that's what I wanted to add.
Okay. Okay.